trying to tell you something that I already said.
Oh, hello. Shall we read a chapter then? Chapter 7, Abel. The very next night, I got a text from Abel. I hadn't seen him since before the kiss. We had chatted back and forth a bit over text about movies we'd seen and some other random stuff, but it sort of felt like the boy was keeping his time with us separate. Consciously, but also unconsciously, the way he does so well. It had been on my mind, though, throbbing a little beneath the surface, adding to my feeling like a girl instead of a friend. Plus, Abel's energy honestly made me feel just as sparkly as the boys, and I'd missed him. So the text lit me up. Hey, are you leaving for the holidays or are you staying in LA? I still had a full week before heading back home for the holidays. I was desperately trying to break free from my overly loving, overly generous comfort trap of a family so I could finally become a full human adult, and that meant tiny acts of rebellion like waiting until the day before Christmas Eve to come home. We rapid-fire texted back and forth. Hi, I'm here till Saturday, I think, and then I have a flight to come back for New Year's. Will you be here? Yeah, I'm out here the entire time. I wanted to get some shrooms from your hookup, but I don't want to do them alone, LOL. Should we do it? What are you doing for New Year's? Yes, please. If you have plans for New Year's, I have none, so let me know. I have none, LOL, but shrooms could be the start of our plan. I'm sure we could find something fun. Yes, good idea. Always thinking smart, you are. The Mushroom Man lived in a sort of obscure area of town in the sprawling part of LA known as Mid-City. At this time, I was running errands for a movie star from the 80s as my side hustle, and she happened to send me on an errand near the Mushroom Man's house the very next day. So I took advantage of the opportunity to pick us up some chocolates. They came in a purple tinfoil wrapper with the words, "Not far off lies a magical world right under our noses and universes away." Very official psychedelics. The next day, Abel texted me in the early evening. Hey, what are you up to tonight? Hi, I gotta do tape in a little, but what are you up to? Down to hang after if it's not too late? Alright, yeah, hit me up. I might be going to this cool show for this band at 9, but also may not. I'm just bored. I want to hang out. Ha ha ha. Feel you. Band sounds fun. Also down to hang. Cool. Let me know when you're done with your audition. This was the first time me and Abel hung out on our own without someone else organizing it. I was nervous, the way I always am with new situations, but Abel has a way of making you feel instantly like family. If he wants to. And for whatever reason, I had finally broken through his stranger danger and transformed in his mind to the warmth of just that. When I pulled up to his apartment building, I texted him asking where to park. He FaceTimed me to let me know he was coming down to my car to direct me to the spot. It was the first time we FaceTimed. His one-of-a-kind smile lit up my screen and stayed right there all the way until he exploded into the passenger seat of my car. Any nerves were swallowed up by that infectious warmth of his. He was feeling too lazy to go to the show and just wanted to chill and watch a movie. We didn't end up watching anything. We just talked and talked and talked until the middle of the night. He asked how my audition went, and you could tell how genuinely interested he was. Whenever the boy talked about work, it was fleeting, clinical, and objective, with a firm boundary around it. Acting is a weird sport, especially because everyone's always succeeding at different levels. And I think the boy's sensitivity made him hyper-aware to that. But Abel was blunt and curious and wanted to talk about it and learn and help you learn. His hunger for learning permeates through his being like a magnet, pulling toward him more and more opportunities for growth. We talked a little about the boy, but not much. I just told him a little about the kiss. I remember he was impressed at the boy's language. And then he goes, "I don't think it can be helped." I said it tauntingly in my best heartthrob tone. Wow, what a line! I'm gonna tell him that's an impressive fucking line. Don't tell him I told you what he said. Why? It's not like it's bad. Yeah, you're right. I don't care. So then he got like an inch away from my face and just stayed right there for a solid 5 minutes until he finally kissed me. Whoa, so smooth. Not what I would expect. I know, right? It was fun. I don't know, it's chill. I just got out of a relationship, so I'm not looking for anything serious. Word. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are on the same page. It gotta be 3 a.m. before I finally went home. I had that floaty in love feeling all the way back to mine. Planes, trains, and automobiles love to run through the shot and make it really loud in here. The next day, we texted back and forth and decided to eat some of the mushroom chocolates for the winter solstice full moon the following day. I love the celestial world and astrology, and so does Abel. It's one of the many passions we have in common. He's a Leo sun, which is my favorite sign, explaining his enveloping warmth that I can't stop commenting on. Every boy I've ever loved is a Leo of some kind. The boy's a Leo rising and could not possibly care less about this information. Abel's moon is Aquarius, which I think adds to the one-of-a-kind quality of his presence, and his Aries ascendant makes him an unstoppable comet. I'm a Pisces sun, sometimes overwhelming, but often a superpower, a Sag moon, a little preachy with a lot of adventure, and a Gemini rising, which just makes me the most fun while simultaneously fooling everyone into thinking I'm not shy. I went over there at 3 p.m. We were both starving, so we hopped in an Uber down the boulevard to a vegan place to fuel up before the shroomies. The restaurant was calm, but not empty, and we were seated at a table next to the window. Abel sat on the bench with his back against the glass, and I faced him, looking out onto the sidewalk behind him. We were giddy and giggly like little kids about to get into some trouble. Being around Abel always sort of makes me feel this way, but it was definitely confounded by the excitement of the upcoming trip. I hadn't taken mushrooms in about half a year, and he'd never done them in chocolate form before. How long does it take to hit? Probably like 30 or an hour. Cool, should we eat them? Yeah. We snickered devilishly back and forth, ordered some nachos, and popped the chocolates into our mouths. A bald white man sat at the table next to us, who I never would have noticed, let alone remembered, if it weren't for the following series of events. He sat next to me in a chair while a cold, scared-looking woman sat shivering, with temperature or fragility, who could truly say, across from him against the glass next to Abel. Our shroomies started to hit. Now, the two of us can be quite loud and quite oblivious, or you could call it unconcerned, as to how we're being perceived in our surroundings. We sort of just envelop each other into our own little bubble of a world. This truth is pretty potent on its own, but probably exacerbated by the use of psychedelics. Looking back, I think our conversation first piqued the bald man's interest when we were talking about eye color. Both Abel and I have brown eyes. I'll let you wait to learn what color this bald man had at the end, but I'm willing to bet you can guess. I used to want blue eyes, but now I think it would look kind of creepy. The dark-haired blue-eyed look is a specific thing. People with blue eyes look evil. I burst out laughing. He was clearly joking, but also not. I'm serious. They look like sharks. Like evil sharks with their icy blue eyes. I don't know. Those blue-eyed mixed babies are pretty fucking cute. True. With their pretty hair. Yeah, loose curls. From there, we got onto the topic of curl patterns in black hair. Abel's dad is black and his mom is white. We were eating our nachos and coming up on magic mushrooms when we started to discuss the societally induced ideals of curl patterns within the black community. What is it about loose curls versus tight curls again? Looser curls have been more idealized societally. Right. I wonder how much of that stems from like Eurocentric influence and like systemic racism, and how much of it is from it just being less common. Like if it's put on a pedestal for black people because it's whiter or because it's more rare. Yeah, this is a weird comparison, but like how white people in the Middle Ages idealized being pale because most people had to work in the fields. And now, societally, white people idealize being tan when most people are stuck inside on their laptops all day. He looked at me for a second with only a hint of incredulity. Well, I think looser curls are just easier to manage, for one. Oh, totally. But also, I think it's a little idealistic to think of it that way and sort of minimizes the effect that white oppression has on our culture overall. Right. That makes sense. It's tempting to think of it that way, to sort of try to take it out of the hands of Eurocentrism, or just away from the influence of white people or whatever. You can't say things like that! We had had our full of nachos and were on the up and up when we were so rudely interrupted by the bald man's explosive tone. The words projectile vomited out of him and penetrated through the membrane of our bubble all over our lunch. He was trembling, clearly incredibly upset. Things like, what? Abel quipped back immediately, leading with that Aries fire. As a white person, I am very offended by the way you are speaking. What? I was shocked and immediately ready to fight. In the moment, I thought it was his tone. But with a deeper look, the words, as a white person, I'm very offended, triggered me. But rather than writing him off as not deserving to be offended simply because he was white, let's dig even deeper into why he was offended and why that set me off. Abel was calm, which was lesson number 1 for me. You catch more flies with honey, as they say. What about what we said offended you? You sound like skinheads! The two of you should really think about getting more black friends before you continue to talk that way. We were both dumbstruck for a moment, incredibly confused. There's a lot wrong with what the white man just said, maybe most heartbreaking of which is the fact that his intentions seem to be in the name of the good fight. But in case you missed it, this man literally just called a black man and a Jewish woman skinheads. Ironic, because with his tatted arms and shiny white scalp, he looked quite a lot like one himself. And then told us to get more black friends, as if that would serve to counter some presence of racism he had perceived. Wrong. For many, this goes without saying, but for those whom it does not, having black friends is not how we unlearn centuries of racial segregation and inequality in a culture where slavery is the undeniable truth of its history, a truth that is, for the most part, swept under the rug, aside from lightly being touched upon in social studies class as 10-year-olds. Now, Abel has pretty light skin, but is clearly a black human being, especially as viewed from the white as norm gaze of American society. Something he is reminded of every time he interacts with the fundamental truth that has been inextricable from the experience of being a person of color, let alone a black person in this country, meaning the risk of being treated negatively based on his race. But he proceeded to remove his hood and potentially provide some further undeserved, unwarranted clarification to quell the violence in this man's tone, in case the man had somehow been mistaken? I'm black. He said it with a lightly astonished laugh. I couldn't help but laugh too amidst the absurdity unfolding before my eyes. We were on mushrooms, but we only ate a little. And besides, I've never hallucinated that intensely on them before. Plus, we barely started to trip. But this shit felt too unreal. The man simply plowed on like a middle-aged freight train. You're speaking about Eurocentrism? Have you ever even been to Europe? I lived in Europe for a year, but don't really see how that's relevant here. Me too, Spain, I chimed in with Tude. Well, my best friend's sister-in-law is black, and I know she would be very offended by the way you're speaking. Here, the man used tokenism to back up any semblance of a point. We'll just let his confusion about Eurocentrism versus Europe itself slide. But Abel spoke easily, with a serenity of spirit that struck me on its own, and even more so in the presence of such a spontaneous blast. We're speaking about the societal influences within my community. What about that is offensive to you? You can't say things like that! The two of you should be ashamed of yourselves! The frigidity woman had her arms crossed and shook her head at us disapprovingly. I was beyond confused, just waiting for him to speak further through his blind privilege and say that he doesn't see color. You know what? You're clearly very upset, and it seems like nothing we say is going to change that. We're done eating anyway. We're just gonna go. Subtext, we are sensitive mushroom babies, and you are threatening to ruin our trip. Is it the fact that we're speaking about race at all that's upsetting you? I'm genuinely trying to understand. The man was fully shaking, and everyone in the restaurant was now part of our discussion, whether they wanted to be or not. It's your hate speech that's upsetting me! But actually, it seemed to be that Abel had just hit the nail on the head. There was a lot of white people this and black people that being thrown around in mine and Abel's private conversation. And the big takeaway from this experience, I think, for me, is that as white people, we often have an uncomfortable reaction to hearing about or talking about race. This man's inability to make any points beyond his own internalization of being offended makes me think that it was the acknowledgement of race, and even deeper, the acknowledgement of white oppression as a prevailing cultural truth that made him shake. But being against racism does not mean denying any varying degrees of the unconscious and learned behaviors reinforced by society every day. It means doing the work to excavate those learned behaviors in ourselves and helping those we love to do the same. It's a lot of unlearning. For all of us. Funny enough, he was just doing the same thing I tried to do with the curls, but to a louder, more aggressive degree. To minimize the implications of whiteness on our culture by avoiding the truth of indoctrinated white supremacy. In the moment, I wish I could have said even a fraction of this to this man whose intentions got so misconstrued. But I was confused. And like I said, ready to fight. And here, Abel showed me that that is not the way. It's unfortunate that you feel that way. I stood up. Abel started to throw in the towel as well. The waiter tiptoed over. "We're good, we're just gonna head out." I smiled to her warily. We left him in his own fuming confusion, still quite confused myself as well. As we zigzagged our way through the tables toward the front door, now fully tripping, thanks to the adrenaline rush, I think, an Indian woman looked up at us with a face that mirrored our astonished shock, but also served a motherly smile, as if to reassure us with a general but nonetheless comforting, "White people be crazy sometimes, it's okay." We tumbled out the swinging doors back onto the boulevard, spinning with our mouths agape. I couldn't help but feel like we'd done something wrong. Do you think it was the blue-eyed thing that set him off? Abel's shocked face turned to hysterical laughter. His reaction made me feel a little better. "Billy, what the actual fuck?" "I have to call Salem," was the first thing that came out of his mouth. Salem is Abel's sibling and roommate, and according to me, they share different aspects of one complete soul, separated only by the illusion of time and space that materialized in this reality as the less than 2 years of age between them. Salem uses both the pronouns she and they and makes everyone wiser and more aware simply by existing. A gender non-conforming, queer person of color, they are always peeling away at their own layers of learned programming and oppression, inspiring you to keep up and do the same. Their Taurus sun, sturdy as fuck with the best hugs. Aries moon feels no need to involve you in the inner workings of their fiery emotional worlds. And a Gemini rising that combines with the rest of their chart to give them the ability to put their evolution into an eloquence that makes even the most sleeping bigot think twice about his moral standing. What? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm so mad I wasn't there. I live for this shit. I know, but I gotta go. We're on shrooms. Click. He practically hung up on her. That's just their relationship to each other, but also to anyone closest to them. Full of love, but blunt. No bullshit. He looked at me. "Should we call an Uber?" As we waited for the car, Abel could see that I was still shook. "Billy, it's okay. We're not gonna let him ruin our trip. We're leaving him in the restaurant, okay?" I smiled to him, with tears in my eyes. Another layer of my own privilege to look at and peel away. The fragility I felt in the face of racial confrontation, for Black folks don't get to choose not to feel that way. We hopped in the car and asked the driver to just drop us off in the middle of Elysian Park. Neither of us had ever been, but I knew it was supposed to be pretty naturey. By this point, we were giggly and feely. Psychedelics make me emotional usually, but cuddly always. And Abel's the same, with the cuddly part. The drive was short from Echo Park area where we'd been harassed, lol. But it was fucking beautiful. Elysian Park looks a lot like Timbuktu, if you ask me. It covers a large amount of land filled with hiking trails and picnic areas, playgrounds, and lookout spots. Its lush greenery is the most bizarre assortment of trees you've ever seen. Normal, park-like ones scattered between grandpa-looking eucalyptus with full-on Christmas trees sprinkled against the tall, skinny palms that poke their heads over the tops of the hills, making sure you stepped right onto the page of a Dr. Seuss book. These rolling hills were to our left as the sky turned to a magic lilac purple, and the giant moon rose in all her golden glory to the right. The driver stopped at the top of a hill in the middle of the park. "Here?" We looked at each other. Sure. His guess was as good as ours. We didn't have a plan. We were adventuring. We got out to find that we were at one of those lookout spots on the edge of the park with the LA freeway roaring below. The moon was insane. Not sure if it was the mushrooms or just the giant lady of the night showing off for the solstice, but she was fucking huge. We just stared at her in awe for a while as the sky darkened. It was starting to get a little chilly. Now what? I don't know. I said it with a chuckle. His matter-of-factness always tickles me. Let's just stroll, I suppose. Okay. Let's see how far it says to walk to yours from here. I looked it up. 36 minutes. Doable. We set off down through the park. It was dark, but the moon lit our way. I feel that the suggestion that parks and night don't mix is instilled in most humans at quite a young and impressionable age. Plus, being scared when in the company of someone who makes you feel safe is one of my favorite things to do, so I commented on my feelings. It's so fucking pretty out here. I feel like we're in a movie. Like the cinematographer is doing their work. It does feel like that. Like indie coming-of-age movie. We were passing an empty playground. Yeah, or like we're the kids wandering through the park alone at night and soon a little dead girl's gonna show up on one of those swings. Billy! What? Stop. I was quiet and giggled to myself. We're in a movie! He sang, shouted it as he ran down a hill with his arms out like an airplane. I chased after him. We made it safely out of the park and paraded into a picturesque LA neighborhood that bordered it, maintaining a healthy pace. Abel's pretty tall, and I'm pretty small, so I had to work to keep up, but the adrenaline of my excitement for life in this moment made it easy. The street we found ourselves on was east of the park bordering downtown. The houses must have been built in the 20s or before. Small, with pastel-colored wood panels covering their faces like something straight out of a Bukowski novel. They had thoughtfully planned Christmas scenes on display out front, ensuring the existence of their inhabitants. But even though it wasn't late, probably going on 6, there wasn't a soul in sight. It felt like we were explorers who'd stepped through some sort of wormhole into a forgotten dimension where life continued on without the people to facilitate it. The street took us out to the edge of the freeway we'd seen earlier from above, roaring with the last remnants of a light Friday rush. Light because it was the last Friday before Christmas and not too many people are truly from LA. We had moments of banter and moments of silence, all of which felt full and never even kind of strained. We made our way through a semi-deserted Chinatown. Again, I think it must have been so empty just because it was almost Christmas. Either that or the gods wanted us to have the space to build a beautiful bond all on our own. And stopped to get some vegan milkshakes. We slurped up and down the concrete hills that roller coaster through the neighborhoods of the Echo Park downtown border the rest of the way home. We tumbled into the lobby, up the stairs, and through the halls of Abel's apartment building. It's a giant building with hundreds of inhabitants, but it still felt like no one else was around. The halls of the complex have little outdoor moments that bridge its many courtyards and give glimpses of the downtown skyline that glistened with an unreal vibrance in our current state. Everything was beautiful, from the feeling in my heart to the color of the dirtyish carpet that covered the cement floor. What a time. We exploded into Abel's apartment like we were Kramer and Seinfeld or something. Salem sat on the couch, oozing authenticity, and stared at us, taking us in the way they do so well. Y'all are fucked up, aren't you? We ate mushrooms. Where have you been? We went urban hiking. What? Abel laughed at me. We didn't Uber drop us off in the middle of Elysian Park and walked all the way home. They irked their head at us. Different. Salem, this guy at lunch was insane. You would have died. Yes, so tell me, what did he say exactly? On the phone earlier, Abel basically only managed to get out that a bald white man had called us skinheads and told us to get more black friends. Here, we tried to articulate further, but fumbled over one another, trying to recall the confusion of the scene. We were pretty fucking high at this point. The mushrooms scrambled our brains, and eventually we just surrendered to wishing she'd been there. Salem was decorating a jacket for one of their sisters for Christmas. It was stunning. One of her many talents, in true Torn form, is her ability to transform an average article into the most one-of-a-kind piece of aesthetic you've ever seen. It inspired Abel to pick up his own project he'd been working on. A small, stuffed animal hand-sewn from pretty colored socks for his little brother. It was almost done. He was at the stuffing phase, filling its little hands and feet with cotton balls. Such intimacy and originality flowing through them all the way down to their holiday gifts. Somehow, we got onto the topic of a TV idea I was developing, and I started to tell them the story of the world while they worked. I remember at one point I got embarrassed. Do you want me to keep going? Yes! Are you kidding? He shouted sharply back at me for interrupting his story time. It tapped me forward like a pat on the butt from a dance teacher to get out there and make your way on stage to shine. I finished. They were both quiet until he finally said, "Billy, you're freaking me out." Why? Who are you? What do you mean? I'm serious. You come in here, infiltrating my life, my manager, all my friends. Now you're dropping some shit like that? Who are you? I was rolling around on the floor, stretching the way I often do when stoned or on any sort of substance. I don't really drink, but I don't not drink. But I stretch when I'm stoned, and I stretch when I'm tripping, and I stretch when I'm sober too. I come from a dance background, the kind with deeply ingrained teacher trauma from ages 2 to 18. The kind who still has monthly dreams about her dance teacher. So maybe it's that, but stretching just feels so extra good when you're high. I'm me. I don't know what you mean. I was laughing, nervously, vulnerable from my share and from the mushrooms, but I thought I could feel the love and admiration in his tone. He looked at Salem. I get it now. Billy's smart. I was quiet. Like, you're clearly smart just from talking to you, but you're like, really smart, Billy. He said it with a fullness that I felt in my chest. This world of trying to do it, follow your dreams or whatever, can get pretty lonely and pretty tough, especially if you don't have the right people around you. It's a lot of no's, even for the most successful of the bunch. And you're expected to be so vulnerable that you can tap into heightened states of emotional reality with the draw of an inhale. And yet, have a skin thick enough to not give a single flying fuck no matter how many times they tell you that you're not quite it. I hadn't had a lot of like-minded people around me in the time leading up to this. Not that they were bad or anything, but they were just parts of other worlds, not artists. And I never felt safe enough to be my true self. But in this moment, it felt truly okay to be whatever it is I was becoming. Not even from his words, but from the energy shooting out of him. He made me feel seen. And what more are we ever really asking for? But you're still freaking me out. Why? Just it feels crazy always when you're around. And the way you came into my life with everyone closest to me meeting you in different ways. You're like some sort of energy vortex or something. Or like a crazy witch or like a fairy or something. I was laughing almost with tears. Like, are you real? I don't understand. The really crazy part was that I felt exactly the same way.
So hard to find. Just when you think you found me, the illusions in your eyes. That's why I love the moon. Every night it's there for you. It's constant. Unlike these human beings who lie about what it seems to be. You think the earth is where you stand. You're in the palm of someone's hand. And that's why I love the moon. 'Cause it's always there for me. Every night about my window. And that's why I love the moon. 'Cause it's always there for me. Every single night I look outside. It's right there for me. In my mind. And that's why I love the moon, yeah. Because people can consume my love in the wrong way. So I send it up. And I